She said she was traveling solo, then her friend posted them kissing by the pool. She said she needed time to find herself. A week in Bali, alone, to disconnect from work, from stress, from everything. She had been talking about burnout for months, and I thought giving her that space was the right thing to do. We had been together for 3 years, and in all that time she had never given me a reason not to trust her. When she packed her suitcase, I remember how calm she looked, folding each dress like she was folding a part of our life together. There was a white swimsuit on the bed, one she had always said was too revealing. I laughed and told her she might as well take it. She smiled and said maybe she would feel brave enough to wear it this time. That smile stayed in my head long after she left. The first day, she sent me a photo of the ocean, her feet in the sand, a coconut drink beside her. She wrote that it felt peaceful, and I told her she looked happy. The second day, I got a few more messages, quick updates about the beach, the food, the weather. She mentioned a group of tourists she had met, people from Europe, who were also traveling solo. I felt relieved that she had company, even if it was temporary. But by the third day, the tone changed. Her messages came slower, shorter. When I asked how she was, she just said fine. I told myself not to overthink it. Everyone disconnects differently. Maybe she was enjoying her freedom. Maybe she was resting. On the fourth night, silence. I sent a message before bed, telling her I missed her. It stayed delivered but never turned blue. I waited, refreshing her Instagram story every hour, telling myself she was probably asleep or out exploring. I watched the clock tick past midnight, then 2, then 4. The apartment felt too quiet. I turned on the TV, but every sound felt wrong. Even the hum of the refrigerator sounded like it was mocking me. Morning came and still nothing. I opened her profile again. No news stories. No posts. Just the same photo from the beach 2 days earlier. I tried to call, but it went straight to voicemail. I left a message saying I hoped she was safe. That word, safe, suddenly felt heavy. I imagined her wandering somewhere with no signal, maybe losing her phone, maybe needing help. I convinced myself that I was worrying for nothing. Later that afternoon, her best friend posted something. I was scrolling aimlessly, half awake, when I saw it. A group photo by a turquoise pool. My stomach twisted. There she was, in the white swimsuit, the same one she said she would never wear. She looked radiant, glowing in the sun. But it wasn't the swimsuit that stopped me. It was the man beside her. He was shirtless, smiling, his arm around her waist. His face was half hidden by her hair, but his hand wasn't. It was resting on her hip like it belonged there. I tapped the next image. My chest tightened. They were kissing. Not the kind of kiss you give a stranger. The kind that says comfort, familiarity, affection. The caption under the photo said, "She finally found her happiness." My phone nearly slipped out of my hand. For a long moment, I couldn't move. I read the caption again and again, as if another meaning would appear. The screen dimmed, then went black. My reflection stared back at me, pale and expressionless. I wanted to believe it was old, a misunderstanding, something from before us. But she was wearing the bracelet I had given her last month. The same bracelet I had clasped around her wrist before she left, telling her to think of me when she looked at it. Now it shimmered on her arm in someone else's hands. My head felt heavy. I opened her messages, typed her name, and hesitated. Every word I could think of sounded small compared to what I was feeling. When I finally sent her a text, it was simple. "Are you okay?" No answer. I waited an hour, then 2. I tried to call again, but it rang once before cutting off. I sat there staring at the blank screen until my chest started to ache. That night, I didn't sleep. I went through our old messages, reading the ones where she told me she loved me, where she promised we were forever. I couldn't understand how someone could say those words and then vanish into another life so easily. The next morning, I refreshed her friend's page again. The photo was gone. Deleted. My heart raced. It confirmed everything I feared. They knew what they had done. They just hadn't cared who saw it until it caused a problem. I scrolled through the comments that had been left before it was removed. People had written things like goals and love wins. They thought it was romantic. They didn't know I was sitting miles away, watching the woman I loved build a new story without me. I started thinking back to the weeks before her trip. The sudden gym sessions. The new clothes. The way she began wearing perfume even when staying home. The moments I thought were signs of self-care were actually preparations for something else. I had ignored the clues because love makes you blind in the most humiliating ways. That evening, I walked into our bedroom. Her side of the bed still smelled faintly of her. I opened the drawer where she kept her things. A photo of us was still there, tucked under her scarf. I stared at it until my eyes blurred. Then I closed the drawer and sat on the edge of the bed, wondering when everything had started to unravel. The noise of the city outside felt distant. People were laughing, cars were passing, and somewhere out there she was living a different reality. I thought about the white swimsuit again. How she had said she wasn't brave enough to wear it. Maybe she meant she wasn't brave enough to wear it in front of me. By the end of that night, I stopped refreshing her profile. I deleted our last conversation, but kept the photo, like proof that what I had seen wasn't just imagination. I didn't cry. I didn't even shout. I just sat there quietly, realizing that the woman I thought I knew had already left long before her flight. The trip wasn't about finding herself. It was about leaving me behind. And as the room sank into silence, I understood something cruel but true. Trust isn't broken in one moment. It fades, slowly, quietly, like the last unread message that never turns blue. 2 days after her last message, I woke up to sunlight cutting through the blinds and the faint vibration of my phone on the nightstand. For a second, I thought it was her. My heart jumped the way it always did whenever her name lit up the screen. But it wasn't her. It was a tag notification from her best friend. I didn't even hesitate. My thumb moved before my brain could stop it. The image loaded slowly, the screen bright against the dark room. I saw the turquoise pool first, the kind that looked too perfect to be real. Then I saw her. She was sitting at the edge of the water, her hair wet, her skin glowing under the sun. A white swimsuit clung to her shoulders, the same one I had folded before she left. She was smiling, holding a cocktail with a slice of lime floating on top. Next to her was a man I had never seen before. His hand rested on her waist, fingers tracing her skin like they had done it before. They were laughing together, eyes locked, as if the world around them didn't exist. For a moment, I couldn't move. My pulse quickened, and my throat felt dry. I swiped to the next slide. That was when my world split in half. They were kissing. Not the shy, hesitant kind of kiss you share in a new relationship. This was deep, slow, familiar. Her hand rested on his neck like it belonged there. Behind them, palm trees swayed, the pool sparkled, and the caption under the post read that she had finally found her happiness. I read it twice, trying to make sense of the words. The screen started to dim, but I didn't move. I just kept staring, waiting for the image to change, waiting for someone to tell me it wasn't real. I felt a cold wave rise inside me. My chest tightened, and for a brief moment, I forgot to breathe. I tried to look for clues, anything that could explain it away. Maybe it was an old photo, maybe the man was a friend, maybe it was some kind of prank. But her bracelet was there, the silver one I gave her on our second anniversary. She was wearing it in the picture, right under the sunlight. That was enough to crush every last bit of denial I had left. I checked her profile. Still public. Still no sign of me. No story updates, no messages, no attempt to explain anything. She hadn't even cared to hide it. The realization hit me harder than the photo itself. She had wanted me to find out this way, or at least didn't care if I did. The thought burned. I opened her messages, scrolled through our chat, and stopped at the last thing she had sent me before she disappeared. A simple goodnight with a heart. 2 days later, she was kissing someone else by a pool in Bali. I went back to the photo. Her best friend had tagged her in it without hesitation, as if betrayal was now a trend to share. I looked at the comments. Strangers were writing things like beautiful couple, perfect, together, love wins. Every word felt like another blade pressed against my skin. I imagine her reading those comments, maybe even smiling. The woman I loved, the one who used to fall asleep next to me, was now a character in someone else's story. I left the app, put the phone down, and stared at the ceiling. I wanted to scream, to break something, but my body wouldn't move. I felt empty and full of noise at the same time. The walls seemed to close in, and I could hear my heartbeat in my ears. I got up, splashed cold water on my face, and looked at myself in the mirror. I looked like a man who had just discovered the truth too late. For hours, I paced the living room trying to decide what to do. I thought about calling her. I thought about messaging her friend and demanding an explanation. I even typed a few words before deleting them. Every version of what I wanted to say sounded weak compared to the reality I had seen. There was no sentence that could undo that image. I sat back on the couch, watching the clock tick slowly, each second louder than the last. By the afternoon, I convinced myself that maybe it was nothing serious. People make mistakes. Maybe she got carried away. Maybe it was a misunderstanding. I wanted to believe that because believing the truth meant accepting that the person I loved was capable of cruelty. But the truth has a way of waiting. That evening, another post appeared on her friend's story. A short clip of them laughing while he carried her on his back through the shallow end of the pool. Her voice was clear, soft, and playful. She called him by a name I didn't recognize. The sound of her laughter, once my favorite thing, now felt unbearable. I closed the app and sat in silence again. My hands shook and I realized I had been clenching my phone too tightly. I placed it on the table and stared out the window. The city outside kept moving as if nothing had changed. People were walking, cars were honking, life went on. Inside, everything had stopped. That night I didn't eat. I didn't sleep. I replayed every moment of the last few months in my mind, looking for signs I might have missed. The late-night texts she said were from work, the sudden urge to take solo walks, the way she started locking her phone. It was all there, hidden in plain sight. I had been blind, or maybe I had chosen to be. Love makes you ignore the alarms because you would rather live in the lie than face the silence after the truth. The next morning, I woke up with swollen eyes and an ache in my chest that felt permanent. I opened my phone again and found that the post had been deleted. The friend who tagged her had made her account private. It was like they had cleaned the crime scene overnight. But what they couldn't erase was the image now carved into my memory. I could still see her face in the sunlight, the pool behind her, the warmth in her eyes that used to be mine. I tried calling her once more. It rang twice, then went to voicemail. I didn't leave a message this time. There was nothing left to say. I stared at her profile picture, the one where she was smiling in a garden I had taken her to on our anniversary. I thought about deleting her number, but couldn't bring myself to do it. It felt too final, like accepting that we were over. That night, I sat by the window with the lights off, listening to the city hum outside. Somewhere, she was probably laughing again, holding another drink, pretending her world was perfect. I realized she hadn't just found her happiness. She had buried mine to build it. And as much as it broke me, I also understood that she had never been lost. She just wanted a new audience for her version of freedom. The tag had done more than expose her secret. It had exposed me too, the man who loved too blindly, trusted too easily, and learned too late that some people only find themselves by destroying the ones who help them stand. I called her immediately. The line rang once, then stopped. I tried again, pacing the floor, my pulse hammering in my chest. The phone rang a second time, a third time, then nothing. I kept calling as if persistence could rewrite what I had seen. By the 10th call, I sat down and stared at the screen. My reflection looked like someone else. My hands were trembling, and my thoughts ran in circles. I typed a single message asking if this was her idea of finding herself. The moment I hit send, I felt both relief and regret. Relief because I had said something, regret because I knew she would see it and not care. Minutes passed like hours. I waited, watching the screen, waiting for the little typing bubble that never came. 3 hours later, she finally replied with one line. She said she did not mean for me to see that. Nothing more. No explanation. No apology. Just a sentence that made everything worse. I stared at the message until my vision blurred. The meaning behind her words sank deeper with every second. She was not sorry for what she had done. She was only sorry that I had found out. I tried to call again, but she did not pick up. The silence between the rings felt heavier than any argument we had ever had. I remembered the way she used to answer on the first ring, her voice always soft and playful. Now all I could hear was static, and my own breath echoing in the quiet. I sent another message asking her if the man in the photo was someone she had met there or someone she had known before. I waited, but she never answered. As the hours passed, the room around me felt smaller. Every object reminded me of her. The candle she bought during our trip to Marrakesh, the blanket she always stole from my side of the couch, the framed photo on the wall where she leaned against me with her eyes closed. I wondered how someone who had shared my mornings, my fears, and my plans could erase me from her world so quickly. I replayed every conversation we had before her trip. I remembered her saying she needed space, that she wanted time to breathe. I thought it meant self-reflection. Now I understood it meant distance from me. By evening, I started to see the picture clearly. The solo trip was never solo. The plans, the sudden excitement about traveling alone, the way she insisted on paying for everything herself, all of it was part of a story she had already written. The betrayal cut deep, but what hurt even more was realizing that her best friend had helped her hide it. The same woman who had laughed in my kitchen, who helped me plan her surprise birthday party, who once told me how lucky she was to have a man like me. They had both played their parts perfectly. The more I thought about it, the more the silence became unbearable. I opened her profile again. She was still active, posting travel reels and responding to comments from strangers. None of them knew that behind those photos was a mess of broken trust and quiet heartbreak. I left a message under one of her pictures that said I hope he was worth it. A few minutes later, the comment disappeared and she blocked me. That was her final answer. I sat in the dark for a long time, scrolling through my gallery, stopping at a video of us laughing while cooking together. I could hear her voice clearly, telling me not to burn the onions. I smiled for a second before the weight of the present came crashing back. I deleted the video. Then I deleted another and another until my phone felt empty, like my life. Later that night, her best friend posted a story from a beach bar. I saw them again, surrounded by music, lights, and people cheering. She was dancing with the same man from the photo. Her face glowed under the neon lights, and she looked carefree, almost unrecognizable. I watched it until it disappeared after 15 seconds, then replayed it from memory, each frame cutting deeper than the last. Around midnight, I decided to send one last message. I told her I hoped she found what she was looking for, even if it destroyed everything we built. I did not expect a reply, and none came. My chest ached, not from anger anymore, but from exhaustion. I wanted to understand why people destroy what loves them most just to feel something new. I tried to sleep, but my mind replayed the call that never happened, the message she never sent, the sound of her laughter from the video. The next morning, sunlight hit the window again, and for a second, I forgot everything. Then I saw my phone and remembered. No new messages. No missed calls. Just emptiness. I made coffee and sat by the window, watching people walking to work. The world continued as if nothing had changed, but I knew something inside me had. Trust once broken never fits back the same way. I opened her chat and scrolled through it one last time, reading every message from the beginning to the end. The story of us was all there, from the first "I miss you" to the last unread sentence. By noon, I received a text from a mutual friend asking if we were still together. Someone had seen her holding hands with a man at the airport before she flew back. I replied that I did not know, and that was the truth. I did not know who she was anymore. I looked at the photo again, the one where she wore the bracelet I gave her, and I realized that even the smallest details I loved about her had turned into reminders of deceit. That night, I turned off my phone and sat in silence. The walls around me felt cold, but the stillness helped. I realized that I had spent days chasing answers from someone who had already moved on. I remember her saying once that love only works when both people keep choosing each other. Somewhere along the way, she stopped choosing me. The hardest part was accepting that the person who once promised to stand beside me through everything had become the one I could no longer reach, not even with 100 calls. When I finally lay down to sleep, I didn't think about what she was doing or who she was with. I thought about how fragile trust is, how it can vanish in a single moment and leave behind an emptiness that feels infinite. I knew I would wake up tomorrow still haunted by the unanswered call, but at least now I understood that silence itself had been her answer all along. When she came back, she texted me that she wanted to talk. The message came late at night, short and almost careless. Against every ounce of logic, I agreed. I told her to come by the next day. Part of me wanted to hear her voice, to see if she would have the courage to lie to my face. Another part of me wanted to see if there was even a trace of the woman I used to know still hiding behind the mask she had worn on that trip. The hours crawled by as I waited, my thoughts shifting between anger and the faint hope that maybe, somehow, there was an explanation. By evening, I started to see the picture clearly. The solo trip was never solo. The plans, the sudden excitement about traveling alone, the way she insisted on paying for everything herself, all of it was part of a story she had already written. The betrayal cut deep, but what hurt even more was realizing that her best friend had helped her hide it. The same woman who had laughed in my kitchen, who helped me plan her surprise birthday party, who once told me how lucky she was to have a man like me. They had both played their parts perfectly. The more I thought about it, the more the silence became unbearable. I opened her profile again. She was still active, posting travel reels and responding to comments from strangers. None of them knew that behind those photos was a mess of broken trust and quiet heartbreak. I left a message under one of her pictures that said I hope he was worth it. A few minutes later, the comment disappeared and she blocked me. That was her final answer. I sat in the dark for a long time, scrolling through my gallery, stopping at a video of us laughing while cooking together. I could hear her voice clearly, telling me not to burn the onions. I smiled for a second before the weight of the present came crashing back. I deleted the video. Then I deleted another and another until my phone felt empty, like my life. Later that night, her best friend posted a story from a beach bar. I saw them again, surrounded by music, lights, and people cheering. She was dancing with the same man from the photo. Her face glowed under the neon lights, and she looked carefree, almost unrecognizable. I watched it until it disappeared after 15 seconds, then replayed it from memory, each frame cutting deeper than the last. Around midnight, I decided to send one last message. I told her I hoped she found what she was looking for, even if it destroyed everything we built. I did not expect a reply, and none came. My chest ached, Not from anger anymore, but from exhaustion. I wanted to understand why people destroy what loves them most just to feel something new. I tried to sleep, but my mind replayed the call that never happened, the message she never sent, the sound of her laughter from the video. The next morning, sunlight hit the window again, and for a second, I forgot everything. Then I saw my phone and remembered. No new messages. No missed calls. Just emptiness. I made coffee and sat by the window, watching people walking to work. The world continued as if nothing had changed, but I knew something inside me had. Trust once broken never fits back the same way. I opened her chat and scrolled through it one last time, reading every message from the beginning to the end. The story of us was all there, from the first "I miss you" to the last unread sentence. By noon, I received a text from a mutual friend asking if we were still together. Someone had seen her holding hands with a man at the airport before she flew back. I replied that I did not know, and that was the truth. I did not know who she was anymore. I looked at the photo again, the one where she wore the bracelet I gave her, and I realized that even the smallest details I loved about her had turned into reminders of deceit. That night, I turned off my phone and sat in silence. The walls around me felt cold, but the stillness helped. I realized that I had spent days chasing answers from someone who had already moved on. I remember her saying once that love only works when both people keep choosing each other. Somewhere along the way, she stopped choosing me. The hardest part was accepting that the person who once promised to stand beside me through everything had become the one I could no longer reach, not even with 100 calls. When I finally lay down to sleep, I didn't think about what she was doing or who she was with. I thought about how fragile trust is, how it can vanish in a single moment and leave behind an emptiness that feels infinite. I knew I would wake up tomorrow still haunted by the unanswered call, but at least now I understood that silence itself had been her answer all along. When she came back, she texted me that she wanted to talk. The message came late at night, short and almost careless. Against every ounce of logic, I agreed. I told her to come by the next day. Part of me wanted to hear her voice, to see if she would have the courage to lie to my face. Another part of me wanted to see if there was even a trace of the woman I used to know still hiding behind the mask she had worn on that trip. The hours crawled by as I waited, my thoughts shifting between anger and the faint hope that maybe, somehow, there was an explanation. She arrived in the afternoon. I heard the sound of her heels before I saw her face. When I opened the door, my breath caught for a second. She stood there wearing a jacket over what looked like the same white swimsuit top from the photo. Her hair was tied up, her face bare, and her eyes carried that kind of exhaustion that comes from guilt. For a brief moment, I saw the woman I had fallen for, the one who used to laugh until she cried and always smelled like coconut and jasmine. Then I remembered the pool, the man, the kiss. The illusion died instantly. She stepped inside without waiting for an invitation. I watched her eyes scan the apartment like she was walking through a memory. The couch where we used to fall asleep, the kitchen counter where we made pancakes on Sundays, everything looked smaller under the weight of what had happened. She sat down slowly and clasped her hands, trembling slightly. I stayed standing, my arms crossed, unsure if I wanted to hear anything at all. She started talking, her voice shaky and low. She said she never meant to hurt me, that things had just gotten complicated. Asked her a simple question. Did you love him? She looked up, and for a moment I thought she would say yes. But she didn't. She said nothing. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. Then tears filled her eyes, and she whispered that it wasn't supposed to happen. I laughed, not because it was funny, but because of how absurd it all sounded. Asked if she meant the kiss or the tag. She flinched. She said she had been drunk, that he was just a friend, that the photo looked worse than it was. Her excuses felt rehearsed, fragile, and hollow. I walked to the table, picked up my phone, and showed her the rest of the pictures. The ones her friend had posted before deleting them. In one of them, she was smiling at him, her hand resting on his chest. In another, his fingers trailed along her thigh. Their drinks sat side by side, the same way ours used to. When she saw them, she froze. The tears stopped, replaced by a silence, so heavy I could hear the faint ticking of the clock behind her. For the first time since everything happened, I saw guilt in her eyes instead of lies. She reached out as if she wanted to touch my arm, but I stepped back. I told her that I had spent nights trying to understand what went wrong, wondering if I had done something to drive her away. I told her that seeing her like that, smiling for someone else, had made me question every good thing we ever shared. She tried to explain, but her words came out tangled. She said he was part of the group she met at the resort, that one night after too many drinks they ended up alone by the pool, and one thing led to another. I asked her how many nights it took for one thing to lead to another again and again. She went quiet. The silence between us spoke louder than any confession. She started crying harder, repeating that she made a mistake. I told her mistakes happen when you spill coffee or forget a birthday, not when you choose to betray someone who trusted you. She said she didn't plan it, that she felt empty before the trip and wanted to feel something again. I asked her if she ever thought about how empty I would feel after seeing what she did. Her eyes met mine, and for a second I saw fear. Not of me, but of what she had done. She stood up and walked to the window, wiping her tears with the sleeve of her jacket. She said she missed me, that the trip had shown her how much she wanted to come back. I told her she never left because of the trip. She left because she wanted to see what life would look like without me in it. She turned around, eyes wide, realizing I had already made peace with the truth she was still avoiding. Then came the question that burned inside me since the day I saw that picture. I asked her if she had planned to tell me, or if she had hoped I would never find out. She admitted she thought I would never see it, that her friend's post had been an accident. I shook my head, realizing that the worst kind of betrayal isn't done out of passion, but out of carelessness. She had gambled with my heart and lost interest before the consequences arrived. She tried to reach for my hand, whispering that she still loved me. The words sounded foreign now, stripped of meaning. I told her love without respect is only noise, and that I had heard enough of it. She started apologizing again, but I stopped her. I told her I didn't need her guilt. I needed her honesty, and she had already spent it on someone else. The air between us grew colder. She asked if there was a chance we could start over. I looked at her and said the version of her I loved no longer existed. She nodded slowly, tears falling onto her jacket. She looked smaller than I remembered, fragile and lost. For a brief moment, I almost felt sorry for her. But then I remembered the pool, the kiss, the caption that said she had found her happiness. She turned to leave, pausing at the door. She said she hoped one day I would forgive her. I told her forgiveness doesn't erase what you did. It only stops it from haunting me. She opened the door, the same way she had months ago when she left for that trip, and walked away without looking back. When the door clicked shut, the apartment fell into silence again. The faint smell of her perfume lingered in the air, mixing with the quiet hum of the refrigerator. I sat down on the couch and looked at the empty spot where she had been. It was strange how something could feel both final and unfinished at the same time. I picked up my phone, opened her old messages, and deleted everything. The screen went blank, and for the first time since she left, I felt something close to peace. Outside, the world kept moving, unaware of the storm that had just passed through my living room. I looked out the window and realized that she had never returned to fix anything. She had come back only to ease her conscience. But some things once broken cannot be repaired. The woman I once waited for had come back wearing the same swimsuit she betrayed me in, and that was all the answer I needed. That night, I did what she never expected. I sat on the couch, the lights off, the photo still glowing on my phone screen. The same one that had torn through every ounce of trust one ever had. I stared at it for a long time, thinking about how easily she had built a lie and called it freedom. I opened my story and uploaded the picture. The one of her and the man by the pool, their smiles soaked in sunlight. But this time, I added my own caption beneath it. Sometimes people find themselves by losing you, and sometimes that is the best thing that could happen. I watched it post, the progress bar filling slowly, almost ceremoniously, like sealing the last chapter of something that had once meant everything. Within minutes, the notification started. A few of our mutual friends reacted with shock. Some sent question marks, others sent messages asking if I was okay. The story spread faster than I expected. Screenshots bounced between group chats, and I could almost feel the ripple moving through our small circle of people who used to believe we were perfect together. Her friend, the one who had tagged her, deleted the entire album less than an hour later. The story that had exposed everything vanished into digital dust. But it was too late. Everyone had already seen it. My phone kept vibrating, a blur of messages filling the screen. Some were from friends telling me I was right to do it, others asking if I wanted to talk. Then her name appeared. The same name that used to make me smile now felt like a reminder of something lost. She begged me to take the story down. She said it would ruin her reputation, that people were misunderstanding the situation. She said it wasn't fair. I read her messages one by one without replying. Every line sounded like an attempt to control the damage, not the regret of someone who had done wrong. I put the phone face down on the table and stood up. The apartment felt cold, and her presence lingered in every corner. I walked to the bedroom, opened the closet, and began pulling her clothes off the hangers. Each piece carried a memory. The red dress she wore on our anniversary, the blue hoodie she always stole from me, the perfume bottle half empty on the dresser. I folded everything neatly, not out of kindness, but because anger deserved to look clean when it leaves. I placed her shoes, her makeup bag, her jewelry, and her scattered belongings into a box. At the top, I put her passport, the same one she had used to fly away from me. It was strange how calm I felt. There was no yelling, no tears, just quiet purpose. I carried the box downstairs and left it in front of her door. For a moment, I looked at it sitting there, a collection of things that once meant love, but now only represented lies. I walked back upstairs without looking back. When I returned to my apartment, the story was still up. Hundreds of people had viewed it. Her friend had stopped posting entirely. I imagined her sitting somewhere, phone in hand, panic spreading across her face as she realized she could no longer control how people saw her. I didn't enjoy the thought, but I also didn't regret it. Some truths need to be seen to be believed. Around midnight, I turned off my phone and sat by the window. The city was quiet, the streets almost empty. I thought about how everything had started with a trip she called solo. I thought about the long nights waiting for messages that never came. I thought about the man in the photo, smiling like he had won something, unaware that what he had taken was already broken. For the first time since it all began, I felt something close to peace. The next morning, sunlight crept through the blinds. I reached for my phone out of habit and saw a new story notification. It was her. A photo of an airport terminal, a boarding pass on the seat beside a cup of coffee. She captioned it with something vague about healing and new beginnings. There was no tag, no second glass, no hidden hand on her waist this time. Just her reflection on the window, looking out at the runway. Alone for real. I watched it for a second, then closed the app. I didn't screenshot it, didn't react, didn't feel anything sharp anymore. The ache that had kept me awake for days had faded into something distant, something quiet. She was leaving again, probably running from the wreckage she created, but I was no longer the destination she was escaping from. I made coffee, the same way she used to like it, strong and slightly bitter. The first sip burned my tongue, but it grounded me. I looked around the apartment. The space felt lighter, cleaner. No trace of her perfume. No forgotten clothes draped on the chair. Just silence and sunlight. I sat on the couch, opened my laptop, and began deleting old photos. I stopped at one where we were smiling in front of a waterfall, both pretending happiness was eternal. I stared at it for a while, then pressed delete. The screen went blank. Throughout the day, messages kept coming from people who had seen my story. Some said they were proud of how I handled it, others told me to move on. A few even sent screenshots of her trying to explain herself to mutual friends, claiming that the photo was taken out of context. It didn't matter anymore. Let her rewrite the story however she wanted. I had already lived through the truth, and that was enough. In the evening, I took a walk through the park near my building. The air smelled of rain, and the trees swayed gently. For the first time in weeks, my chest felt light. I realized peace doesn't come from forgetting. It comes from accepting that some endings don't need closure. She had her story, and now I had mine. When I came back home, I opened my story again and watched the view count rise. I thought about deleting it, but I decided to leave it up until it expired. Not as revenge, but as a reminder. It was not just a photo anymore. It was a line between who I was and who I had become. Later that night, as I got ready for bed, I noticed something strange. The silence that used to haunt me now felt comforting. I no longer waited for a message, no longer reached for my phone at every buzz. The storm had passed, and in its wake was something steadier. I realized I didn't need her apology, her explanation, or her presence. I had found what she claimed to be searching for. Myself. Before sleeping, I looked out at the city one last time. Somewhere out there, she was probably boarding a plane, starting another chapter. I wished her well, not out of love, but out of freedom. She had found herself by losing me, and I had found peace by letting her go. The photo that once broke me had now become the symbol of my release. And for the first time in months, I closed my eyes and slept without waiting for her name to light up my screen.